I balanced my coffee, my badge, and my sarcasm like I did every morning, gracefully, with a slight undertone of bitterness. "Morning, Isla," Marcy chirped from marketing, spinning in her chair. "Your shoes are judging me." "They are," I replied. "They told me your third-quarter ad pitch was a war crime." Laughs, easy, familiar. My kingdom of numbers and controlled chaos. That was until I got the email. HR, conference room 3A. Now, no subject line, no warning. I knocked, walked in, and was met by 3 smiles that had the warmth of a graveyard shift vending machine. "Isla," said Missy from HR, her tone painfully polite. "This is just a structural reassignment. Nothing personal. Reassignment?" I blinked. "I'm senior analyst. You're not exactly spoiled for people who know how to navigate quarterly volatility curves blindfolded. It's a new division. High priority. You'll be supporting executive operations. Directly, translation, I'd be fetching data and probably coffee for the CEO himself. The man who didn't even attend town halls. The ghost in an Armani suit. No explanation, no appeal, no warning. I packed up my desk in a blur of stunned disbelief and passive-aggressive post-its. The new workstation was a corner nook outside the top-floor office, pristine, cold, windowless. I sat down. My nameplate was already there, like they'd known. Then I felt it, someone behind me, not footsteps, a presence. I turned. He was just there, Riven Hale. I'd seen him once before, in a shareholder meeting clip, but nothing prepares you for Riven Hale in person. He didn't walk, he appeared. His tailored suit didn't wrinkle. His eyes were the kind of sharp that cut through performance reviews and egos alike. He looked at me like I was data he'd already analyzed. "Miss Winters," he said, voice calm, detached. "Welcome to Executive Ops." I stood, chin up. No one explained the reason for my demotion. He took a slow step forward. "You think this is punishment?" he asked, standing too close. His voice didn't rise. "I just needed you where I can watch you." My spine chilled. Not from fear, from curiosity. My new desk wasn't really a desk. It was a glass slab wedged between 2 walls in a hallway, with a frosted divider pretending to offer privacy. It was so sterile I felt like I needed gloves to breathe near it. Every time I moved my mouse, the echo clicked across the marble floors like gunshots. I missed my old department already. The controlled mess of charts, potted plants half dead from fluorescent lighting, the banter about who'd been left out of birthday cupcakes. Now I sat 5 feet from the door of a man who made icebergs look emotionally unstable. Executive operations. What a joke. I checked my new task list. It was populated with such vital assignments as compile status reports from departments that barely interacted with mine, cross-check file formats for Q1 archive folders, make sure the briefing room has working pens. I had led teams that restructured billion-dollar asset models. Now I made sure people could write. My jaw clenched. From my seat I could see the matte black door to Riven Hale's office. It had no nameplate, but everyone knew what it was. People walking by glanced at it like it might open and eat them whole, which frankly seemed plausible. I'd never seen him enter or leave, but I'd catch motion, sometimes a shadow where it shouldn't be. The faintest flicker in the glass wall at just the edge of my vision. The man had no reflection. Or maybe I was just losing it. That was also on the table. A soft knock interrupted my descent into paranoia. I looked up. A woman with sleek black hair, a pencil skirt, and an expression somewhere between serene and exhausted held out a paper cup. "Caffeine. For surviving existential demotions," she said. I blinked. "Thanks." She offered a small smile. "I'm Tori, assistant to the boss. You're currently questioning the humanity of—" "So he is human," I said, taking the coffee. "That's a relief." Tori hesitated. "I didn't say that." I raised an eyebrow. "Just don't lie to him. Ever," she added. "He doesn't like it. Most bosses don't." "No," she said softly. "I mean, he knows." She walked away before I could form a reply. That was when I started testing it. Little lies. Harmless ones. "Yes, I've already emailed the report. Of course, I slept last night. No, I don't hate this job." And every single time I'd feel it. Pressure. Like the air had thickened. My spine would tighten, and the back of my neck would prickle like a storm was about to break. Once, when I said, "I'm fine," I looked up, and the light from inside his office flickered, just for a second. I could swear his eyes were on me, through the frosted glass, through everything, impossible. But still, he knew. The worst part? He never acknowledged it, never called me out. It was like watching a wolf sniff the air, knowing the deer is bluffing about being unafraid, but letting it live anyway. That's when I decided he wasn't watching me like prey. He was studying me like a variable he hadn't solved yet. That thought should have unsettled me. Instead, it made me straighten in my chair. Let him wonder. I wasn't going to flinch. Later that day, I dropped my pen under the desk and crouched to grab it. That's when I saw it, tucked under the edge of the desk leg, aged and curled slightly at the corners. A slip of paper, yellowed and fragile, like it didn't belong in this decade. I picked it up, watched the reflections. No sender, no signature, just that. I looked around. Tori wasn't in sight. The hallway was empty. The hum of the air conditioning felt suddenly louder. I turned slowly toward the glass wall across from my desk, where I could just barely make out my reflection. Behind it, a vague shadow shifted, too far to be mine. The executive conference room was all sharp corners and silence. A long, seamless glass table stretched across the space like a frozen river. The chairs were spaced too perfectly, the kind of symmetry that made you uncomfortable. I wasn't supposed to be in there, technically, but Tori had asked me to deliver a folder, and I arrived 2 minutes early, just in time to be invisible in the corner when the heads of departments filed in like prisoners approaching a judge. Then came Riven. He didn't open the door. He entered like the room had been waiting for him. The temperature dropped, literally. I shivered and mentally cursed my short sleeves. He didn't sit at the head of the table. He stood. No introduction, no preamble. "Let's begin," he said. His voice was quiet. Not weak, quiet like a scalpel. It shouldn't have carried, but somehow everyone heard him. Every movement stilled. Even the fidgeters stopped. The tapping pens, the bouncing knees. All of it, gone. Then came the questions. One by one, he addressed each department lead. Finance, strategy, product. His tone never changed. He didn't raise his voice, didn't interrupt. But the deeper the questions went, the more these seasoned execs began to squirm. It was bizarre. By the time he turned to a man from R&D, the guy's collar was visibly soaked. I wasn't even the target, and I could feel it. Something pressing against the base of my skull. My lungs took in air but didn't seem to use it. My hands trembled slightly. Like my own heartbeat didn't belong to me anymore. It wasn't intimidation, it was exposure. Like every petty thought, every flinch, every bluff was laid bare. I clutched the folder tighter, waiting for the moment he'd glance at me. He never did. That was worse. When the meeting finally ended, people bolted like kids released from detention. I dropped the folder off at Tori's desk and walked to the kitchen just to feel human again. 2 junior analysts were whispering near the espresso machine, unaware that I'd stepped in. "Did you see Brad?" He looked like he was about to faint. Riven's got that thing, you know, like he can smell your fear. He doesn't even blink. Someone said he doesn't show up in mirrors. I cleared my throat, loudly. They jumped, then fled like startled cats. I wasn't sure what bothered me more, that they were probably exaggerating, or that they probably weren't. I poured myself a coffee and leaned against the counter, trying to shake the chill from my bones. Winters? I turned, and froze. Corey, my best friend, or whatever that meant now. He looked sheepish. Not the fun, oops, I spilled something kind of sheepish. The guilty, I broke something valuable kind. "You have a minute?" he asked. "Depends. Are you about to confess to murdering my cat?" He winced. "I'm sorry." "Oh no. What did you do?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Your Q4 model. I passed it along. Straight to executive review." My blood turned to ice. "You... what?" "I knew it was good. Too good. They wouldn't let you present it. You're not one of their people." He hesitated. "But I am." So I showed it. They loved it. "That was my work, Corey. I didn't claim it was mine. I just..." He stopped himself. "Okay, I let them assume. But I thought, maybe once it's approved I could say you helped." "You thought I'd be flattered to be your footnote?" "No," he said, and now his tone hardened. I thought you'd rather it survive. You're too smart, Isla, and that scares people. There it was. I laughed, but it sounded like glass breaking. So you handed me over. Brilliant. I'll make sure to write you a thank you card. He reached for my arm. I stepped back. You're too good not to be a threat, he said again, softer this time. And you're too weak to stand beside one. I walked out before I could say something worse. Or cry. Or both. Back at my desk, I collapsed into the chair, face burning. The betrayal wasn't even surprising. That's what hurt most. I stared blankly at my monitor. Then, movement. I turned toward the glass wall. No one there. Riven. He stood behind me. Not in the hallway, not in the office, in the reflection. But when I spun around, nothing. Empty air. No footsteps. No door opening. Just the still, icy hum of the floor above the city. I stared at my reflection again. Nothing but me. And just for a second, the faintest shimmer behind my eyes. The elevator ride was already crowded when Missy from HR slipped in just before the doors closed. Her perfume was aggressive, like flowers and weaponized patience. I tried to ignore her. Truly. But she leaned in just enough that I could feel her breath on my shoulder. So, she said, voice all fake sugar. Settling in? Like a champagne bottle in a meat freezer. She gave a tight-lipped laugh. You always were good with words. Shame about the position. It's not a demotion, I said coolly. Just a reassignment. Of course. Her eyes sparkled. Temporary, I'm sure. I didn't like her tone. You know, Isla, she continued, people who don't adapt tend to get shuffled out, quietly. Before it gets messy, I turned to her slowly. I've worked here for 6 years, I said, and I'm not afraid of a little mess. She smiled. Oh, sweetie, you should be. The elevator dinged. She stepped off, heels clicking like a countdown. I exhaled once she was gone. I hated being warned. But I hated being underestimated more. The rooftop smoking terrace wasn't really a terrace. Just a square of reinforced concrete surrounded by a rail and bad decisions. Tori stood alone, her cigarette glowing like a little lighthouse in the fog of her thoughts. I didn't know you smoked, I said, approaching. I don't, she exhaled. Just needed an excuse to be above it all for 5 minutes. Missy tried to threaten me in a 6x6 metal box. It was charming. Tori snorted. Classic Missy. HR stands for hostile reassignments. I leaned on the railing beside her. The wind tugged at my hair. She said I'm a placeholder, that I should prepare to disappear. Tori didn't respond right away. Then, you're not the first person Riven's brought up here, but you're the first one still around after 2 weeks. I turned. Brought up, you mean? Demoted, shifted, reassigned. Whatever word makes it sound normal. Where are the others? She looked out over the city. Gone. Most quit. One transferred. One just didn't come back. The wind carried that sentence a little too far. Why me then? I asked. She flicked ash. That's the question, isn't it? Back at my desk, I noticed something odd beneath the monitor. Another paper scrap, more yellowed than the last, curled, brittle at the edges. I pulled it out carefully. The glass isn't glass. I stared at it, my reflection faint in the screen. What was it then? A barrier? A window? A trick? Who was leaving these? Tori didn't strike me as the cryptic note type. And it wasn't Riven. He didn't warn. He watched. I slid the note into my planner. That afternoon I went digging. Technically, I still had access to our data archive, legacy permissions that hadn't been revoked. I scanned my old project folders until I found it, my Q4 volatility report, the one Corey borrowed. There it was, all my work. Graphs, predictive models, margin compression analysis. Untouched. Except, I frowned. In the margins of the final page, scribbled in ink so faint it almost vanished into the page, was a line in Latin. I read it aloud. Qui vide omnia, non semper videtur. Those who see all are not always seen, I translated aloud, rusty from my 1 semester of dead languages and bad decisions. The lights flickered, and suddenly I wasn't alone. A chill swept the room like someone had opened a freezer behind me. I turned. Riven stood just inside the threshold of the archive door, silent, unannounced, unapologetic. My pulse kicked. "You have a talent for digging," he said. "Curiosity's a side effect of being treated like a liability." He stepped closer. "Do you know what that phrase means?" "I took Latin," I said, trying to sound unimpressed. "You don't scare me with dead languages." He tilted his head, eyes narrowing with something close to amusement. "No," he said softly, "I don't scare you with language." The air between us shifted, heavy, electric. I swallowed. "What is all this?" I asked. "The notes, the appearances, the game of pretending this is just a job?" He didn't answer. Not exactly. Instead, he said, "Most people lie to survive. You lie to stay in control." I stiffened. That's rich coming from someone who operates like a sentient algorithm in couture. "You see patterns," he said, "but you don't believe in meaning. Maybe meaning's just coincidence with better marketing." He smiled then, brief, sharp. "Or maybe," he said, voice dropping, "meaning is what happens when you start watching the watcher." A beat of silence. Then he turned and walked away, footsteps echoing across the tiles like punctuation marks. And I stood there, holding a report, a quote, and 1,000 questions, none of which I was ready to answer. The report was already waiting on my desk when I returned from the archives. It wasn't mine, it was one of his. The paper was thick, cream-colored, heavy enough to be a weapon if wielded correctly. No title, just my name written at the top in slanted, inky script I knew wasn't typed. "Review and annotate. Be thorough. RH. Be thorough. Right." I opened it. The first few pages were dense with language I could barely process. Jargon, data, underlying metrics that didn't belong to any department I'd worked in. It wasn't just a financial analysis. It read like a blueprint for behavior. And buried within the numbers were patterns, predictive modeling for decisions, not just performance. It tracked people, not profits. By page 10, I was sweating. And not just from frustration. He was studying them. Staff, executives, even department heads, as if their choices were formulas, as if emotions were spreadsheets that just needed better formatting. I skimmed faster, then stopped. A margin note in ink. Subject exhibits consistent conflict between verbal compliance and internal resistance. Recommend direct confrontation under controlled parameters. Underneath, my own name. I slammed the folder shut. "Interesting read?" I jerked back. Riven stood behind me, hands clasped behind his back, as if he'd been there the whole time and I had simply failed to register his existence. "I didn't give you permission to analyze me like a lab rat." "I didn't ask," he said calmly. I stood, the report in my hand like a shield. "You expect me to review this and... what, grade you on your psychoanalysis?" "No," he replied, stepping forward. "I expect you to recognize yourself." He pointed to the section I'd stopped at. "Explain this line," he said. "Why did you hesitate there?" "Because you wrote about me like I'm a malfunctioning program." "You're not malfunctioning," he said softly. "You're contradicting yourself." He studied me. Slowly, precisely. "Intent matters," he said. "You don't even realize yours half the time. You're unbelievable." "And yet," he added, eyes flicking to my temple, "you're sweating." I reached up reflexively. "Damn it." He was right. "Stress-induced," I snapped. "Congratulations. You're a glorified thermometer." That earned something unexpected, the ghost of a smirk. Not full amusement, not even half, just a flicker, a crack in the marble. Oh, he can react. Progress. "So what now?" I asked. "More folder-based mind games?" "No," he said. "A demonstration." He turned and walked away without waiting for me to follow. I didn't have to go after him, but I did. The conference room was dim when I entered. The glass walls had been polarized, muting the skyline and casting the space in a low golden gray. Riven stood near the far end, his hands resting on the back of a chair like a conductor waiting for silence. "What is this?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he lifted one hand, and with a flick of his fingers, the lights overhead dimmed further. Then they changed. The room bent. Not physically, not in a way that I could describe, but the light seemed to shift, taking on texture, like mist moving underwater. The reflections in the glass began to ripple, even though nothing touched them. My breath caught. I wasn't alone, not just with him, but with something else. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw it. His eyes glowed faintly gold, like burning paper in a dark room. His pupils weren't round, they weren't human, and when he spoke his voice fractured. Not in sound, in space. "What do you fear, Isla?" I froze. His voice was layered, echoed, but not in any direction I could track. It hit from all sides like pressure against bone. "Excuse me? Your greatest fear," he said. "Name it." I tried to move. My feet didn't respond. "I don't know." "Lie. I choked on the sentence. "I don't want to disappear." Silence. Then the pressure lessened. The light softened. The glass stopped shimmering. Riven blinked once. When he looked up again, his eyes were normal. "Then don't," he said. It wasn't a threat. It was a challenge, and maybe a permission. I took a step forward. "I don't get it," I said quietly. "Why show me this?" He tilted his head. "Because you see what? That this isn't about control," he said. "It's about recognition. You watch, you calculate, you observe patterns others dismiss." I swallowed. "And you think that makes me like you?" "No," he said. "It makes you dangerous, to the ones who prefer shadows." Another pause. Then he stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "Return to your desk, Miss Winters." Just like that. As if we hadn't just peeled back the fabric of reality like a curtain. I walked out on shaky legs, and this time, when I passed my reflection, I saw him standing behind me again. But I didn't look away. Tori found me in the supply room, sitting on a crate of unused cables and staring at my hands like they might offer answers. "Rough day?" she asked, shutting the door behind her. "Define day," I muttered. "Does it end with reality breaking?" She gave me a look. "I saw him," I said. "Not CEO him, not unreasonably symmetrical facial structure him. The other version, the one that bends the air and makes the glass lie." She was quiet for a moment. Then she sat across from me on a rolling stool and exhaled. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "Yet?" Tori leaned forward, elbows on knees. "There are things in this world that don't exist on spreadsheets, that don't need credentials. They just are." "That's not ominous at all." She gave a small, tired smile. "Riven's not human. He was, once maybe, or something close. But now, he's one of them, them?" She didn't blink. "Demons?" The word hit like a dropped weight. "And you just say that like we're discussing someone's Myers-Briggs? I don't expect you to believe it. You already do." I swallowed. "What does he want?" "To keep the balance." Ironically, he used to feed off destruction, fear, greed, but it stopped working, left him hollow, so now, he absorbs just enough to stabilize, like a regulator. And the company? It's his structure, his anchor. Keeps the worst of him caged. And me? I asked. Where do I fit in this stabilizing meal plan? Tori tilted her head. "You don't feed him." I frowned. "Meaning? You feel things, but they're sharp, controlled. You process emotion like data. That doesn't sustain him. So I'm immune?" "No," she said. "You're inconvenient." I laughed, short and bitter. "Great. I've been demoted and declared a dietary failure. Love that for me." But Tori was serious. "You're the first person I've seen make him react. To what? Anything." I left before she could explain more. I needed air and a new sense of reality. Instead, I got a watering can. Literally. A man in coveralls stood by a potted tree in the executive hallway, misting the leaves with more care than seemed necessary. He was old, not frail, but deliberate, movements patient, as though the world would wait for him. I tried to slip past quietly. "Pretty leaves," he said without turning. "But you still have to watch for rot underneath." I paused. "Excuse me?" He looked up. His eyes were milky blue. Not blind, just distant, like he saw too much and not enough all at once. "Some of them fall," he said. "He hasn't. Yet, who?" But he'd already turned away, humming softly, watering nothing. I backed away. Later that evening, I found myself in the executive library. I didn't mean to be there, my legs just led me, like muscle memory from a life I hadn't lived. The space was dark-paneled and quiet, lined with books that smelled more like ash than dust. I trailed a finger along the spine of one that read in silver lettering, Covenants and Consequence. Curious choice. I jumped. Again. Riven stood near a corner shelf, one hand resting on a ladder rung. How long have you been there? Long enough. Do you enjoy creeping up on people, or is it just a side effect of being whatever you are? He smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, just tired. I ask myself that often. I turned, resting my hand on the bookshelf between us. Why do you keep appearing around me? You think I follow you? Don't you? He stepped closer, slowly. No menace, just wait. You're the only person here who doesn't dilute herself with performance. I arched a brow. You're saying I'm authentic? I'm saying you're dangerous. To whom? He paused, then asked quietly, Why do you not fear me? I blinked. Because fear implies surprise, I said, and I've been disappointed too often to be surprised anymore. Silence stretched between us. Then Riven nodded. That's not disappointment, he said. That's strength. I didn't respond, because for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to argue with him. We stood there, surrounded by books no one else read, in a space meant for silence and secrets. And in that moment, I didn't feel like prey. I felt seen. The stairwell between floors 25 and 26 was rarely used. Too narrow, too echoey, but it made a decent shortcut, until it became a trap for secrets. I was 2 steps from the landing when I heard them. Missy's voice first, smooth and venomous. She's asking too many questions, a man replied, familiar. I froze. Martin, my former boss, the one who'd always acted like he was playing chess with an invisible opponent. She's a problem, he said. Riven won't act, so the council will. We'll remove her quietly. I pressed against the wall, heart thudding. She's just an analyst, Missy hissed. Why is she a threat? Because he listens to her, Martin replied. And worse, he hesitates. Missy's silence was the loudest part. She needs to be gone before the quarterly review. Make it look like burnout. Emotional instability. I'll take care of the write-up. I turned and fled before I could hear more. I didn't want to know the details, but I knew enough. They weren't just petty, they were organized, and I was in the way. I didn't go to my desk. I went to him. Riven was in his office, standing before the wall of glass like always, hands clasped behind his back, expression unreadable. He didn't turn as I entered. They want me gone, I said, no preamble. I know, he replied. I blinked. You what? I was informed, then why? I was deciding what to do. I stepped closer, anger bubbling up through my ribs. I'm not a chess piece. You don't get to weigh my value like a metric. Finally, he turned. They speak for the council, he said, but they forget I no longer answer to it. You're saying you'll protect me? He met my gaze, calm and unwavering. No, I'm saying I'll protect my choice. Later that day, Missy was escorted from the building. No announcement, no goodbye email. Just her name stripped from the system and her office emptied before lunch. Martin? Transferred. Overseas. Suddenly and without notice. Whispers filled the halls, but no one dared ask aloud. At my desk, I found one last note. The handwriting was the same. The paper, older than the building. You were never prey. You were the hunter they feared becoming. The company was teetering. The quarterly forecast needed redrafting. The board wanted answers, and the execs were in chaos without Missy's cold, quiet threats to keep them aligned. And for once, Riven didn't assign the task to someone else. He handed the entire mess to me. I need this clean, he said. No emotion. Just truth. Your favorite thing, I muttered, flipping through the pages. Yours too, he replied. We worked late into the evening, me at the screen, him standing silently behind me, occasionally pointing out a trend I missed, a risk factor I underestimated. It should have felt like pressure. It didn't. It felt like partnership, like being matched in a way I didn't know I needed. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. This'll work, I said. The board won't love it, but they'll respect it. Riven didn't respond immediately. Then, you know what I don't understand? I glanced over. He was watching me again, but this time, there was something gentler in it. I don't feed off you, he said quietly. Is that your version of a compliment? I feed on fear, on ambition, on deceit. He stepped closer. But when I'm near you, I'm still, I'm aware, I don't crave. I looked at him, breath caught between seconds. He continued, I don't feed off you, Isla. I learn from you. Silence fell. Not awkward, not charged, just real. I stood slowly. I guess I'm more useful than I look. He smiled, not a smirk, a real smile, much more. We were alone in the strategy room, papers spread between us like battlegrounds we'd already survived. Outside, the city blinked with artificial life. Inside, the silence was warm, real. You always seem so composed, Riven said, eyes flicking over the charts. But I've seen the tension under it, the fractures. I'm excellent at containment, I replied dryly. Some girls learn makeup. I learned emotional risk mitigation. He didn't smile. Instead, he said, Tell me. Tell you what? Where the cracks come from. I hesitated. That request felt too human from someone so far from it. But I was tired of being unreadable, of being the only person in the room pretending not to bleed. I thought I'd marry someone once, I said. We were engaged. He was perfect, on paper. Logical, safe, ambitious. We worked in the same field. Everyone said we were a power couple. Riven said nothing, but his attention sharpened. 6 months before the wedding, he got a better offer. A job across the country, and a partner more, aligned with the company's image. My voice didn't crack. It hadn't in years. But something about saying it here with him made it heavier. He left a note, I added, said I'd understand eventually. Like I was a quarterly report he didn't want to invest in anymore. Silence. Then I laughed, small and bitter. That's when I stopped expecting people to stay. Or to choose me when it mattered. Riven didn't speak right away. Then he said he was a fool. I blinked. He wanted something shallow. You are not shallow, you are substance. Steel disguised as skin. I swallowed. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me in a room full of spreadsheets. He looked down, quiet for a moment. Then, come with me. To where? Your secret lava lair? He didn't answer. He walked to the far wall where an old filing cabinet stood. Then he touched the handle, not turned, touched, and everything shifted. The wall shimmered, then opened. Not a doorway, not really. A passage made of light. He looked back at me, hand outstretched, and like an idiot, or maybe something braver, I took it. The air in his world was thicker, heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. We weren't in the office anymore, not quite. It was the same room but layered, like reality with the skin peeled back. The walls glowed faintly, the surfaces pulsed, and the emotions, they shone. Light hovered in corners, glimmers of color threaded through the floor. I could feel impressions in the air, curiosity, doubt, grief. This is how I see things, Riven said beside me, voice quieter, how I saw them. Before I tried to stop, I turned slowly. You live like this all the time? I used to, he said. When I fed on it, I lived in it, and now, I regulate it, filter it, but it still bleeds through, especially near you. I looked around. What do I feel like in here? He paused. Bright, he said, but sharp, like winter's sun through glass. I shivered, but not from cold. And what do you feel like? I asked. He was silent. Then, like noise, a storm of want, the need to consume and become and be more than this, and you're tired of the noise? I forgot what quiet felt like, he said. Until you... That made something twist in my chest. You said you tried to be human once, I said softly. What happened? I got lost in it, in ambition, in performance. I mistook masks for meaning. And now you hide from it? No, he said. Now I study it, carefully, and what am I? You're the anomaly, he said. You don't perform for power, you perform to survive. But underneath, there's hope. My throat tightened. I didn't think I had any left, I admitted. He turned toward me. You do. A beat of silence. And then, he reached out. Not a dramatic sweep, not possession, just a hand, fingers brushing the back of mine. Warm, grounded, no control, no pressure, just presence. I didn't pull away. In fact, I turned my hand and let my palm press to his. And in that moment, something in both of us eased. My internal voice whispered, maybe demons aren't born, maybe they're made from humans who forgot how to hope. And maybe they can be reminded. My new title was printed on polished glass and mounted outside the corner office. Executive Partner, Isla Winters, not assistant, not analyst, partner. The irony didn't escape me. The woman who once delivered pens and status reports now shaped company policy from the top floor. But the change wasn't just mine. The floor itself had shifted, metaphorically and literally. Riven and I had launched a new division, emotional strategy and stability. It was part joke, part revolution. Where once fear had driven performance, we now tracked fulfillment. Where ambition used to be weaponized, it was now balanced with well-being. Numbers still mattered, but so did people. And it worked. Quarterly engagement was up. Staff turnover dropped. Even the air in the building felt lighter. Riven rarely attended department meetings now. He didn't have to. People no longer feared his presence. They respected it, and more strangely, some even liked it. As for me, I didn't pretend anymore. I didn't perform to survive. I led. And I didn't do it alone. The old janitor was the last to disappear. No notice. No retirement card. One day he was there, watering the same 3 plants with obsessive devotion. The next, gone. In his place, under my keyboard, I found the final note. The paper was nearly translucent. The handwriting familiar. He needed a soul. You lent him yours. I didn't cry. But I sat with that note a long time before I locked it in my drawer. Some things aren't meant to be shared, only carried. The sun was setting when I found Riven by the mirrored wall of the boardroom. Our reflections blurred in the orange light, outlines softened by dusk. He didn't turn as I approached, just spoke softly, voice like velvet against glass. I don't need to watch you anymore. He finally faced me. I want to be beside you, I smiled. Then you better keep up. He did. He stepped forward, and for the first time since I'd met him, he didn't look like a god or a demon, or a shadow trying to hold the world still. He looked human, mine, and I looked back, unafraid, unguarded, and seen. Together, we watched our reflections, 2 figures in glass, equal and no longer alone.